Hey, welcome to App 14, Student Management System using MySQL. Let me tell you what this app will consist of and what you will learn. Now, this app, as you can imagine, is related to the previous app, which was the Student Management System using SQLite. So for this app, we will reuse the code we wrote previously, but this time we will not use SQLite, but we will use MySQL. Why do we do that? Well, because SQLite is a lightweight database, which is good for development and for testing. However, it does have some disadvantages. That's why I want to make sure that you know how to use a more robust database system such as MySQL, which is very popular and as a programmer you'll encounter often in your career. So what we'll do today is I'll take you through how to install MySQL on your computer. Then I'll show you how to use MySQL as a standalone system and then how to use MySQL in Python. And we'll implement MySQL in our student management system code, which we wrote in the previous days. Now in the next video, let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of MySQL versus SQLite. Thanks. Hey, welcome back. In this lecture, we will talk about the differences between MySQL and SQLite. Both of these are database systems, which means they are used to store and manage data. In other words, these two are used to support apps as a data management system. So let's talk about the advantages of MySQL. So we used SQLite 3 previously, and you know what it feels like to work with SQLite. Now with MySQL, you have better concurrency. That's one of the first advantages. With concurrency, we mean, for example, in our previous app, we have these teachers accessing that app, and the teachers can see the data on the table, but they can also add new students. Now, when it comes to adding new students, we're talking about a write operation. Now, if two teachers are using the app at the same time, and they both want to insert a new student, here we're dealing with a write operation. So the user, the teacher, wants to change something, wants to write something on the database. At this point, MySQL tends to be better than SQLite. Both SQLite and MySQL are good in supporting concurrency, so two users or more users doing the same operation at the same time. But MySQL would be better when it comes to thousands of operations at the same time. So with two teachers only, that wouldn't be a problem. But with very large data sets where you have thousands of users doing a write operation, with read operations, it's not a problem, even if you have thousands and hundreds of thousands operations. But with write operations, then MySQL can have an advantage. The next advantage is better for bigger data, which is also somehow related to the first advantage. So MySQL can give you less issues than SQLite when it comes to bigger data. So if you have a program which doesn't have millions of records, then you're good with SQLite. Otherwise, it's better to install and use something like MySQL. And I'll show you how to install and how to use MySQL. The next advantage is supporting more data types. You know, in those database columns that we had previously, like ID, student name, mobile number, we had different data types. For example, for the ID column in the SQLite database was of type int, so an integer. And the student name column, for example, was a text data type. Now, MySQL supports a wider range of data types compared to SQLite. So that's a slight advantage of MySQL. Anyway, SQL still supports a lot of data types that will cover practically all the cases you will work with apps. But this is still something to keep in mind about the difference between MySQL and SQLite. The fourth advantage is inbuilt authentication. You'll see how this actually works in practice when we use MySQL in the next videos today. And this is also related to the fifth advantage, multiple database users. So let me explain this too. With multiple database users, we mean that in SQLite 3, you cannot have different users in the database. I'm not talking about teachers, but like users which can access the database. SQLite doesn't have that option. You'll see that MySQL does have this option, and each of these database users will have their own username and password, so they can use the MySQL software. So MySQL also comes as a software, and from this software you can create multiple database users, and they can access the database through the MySQL software. Now Python can also behave like a user, right? When you write a script, we're gonna give the username and the password to our Python script. And so Python will access the database. However, with SQLite, we didn't have to give any username or password to the scripts because the concept of multiple database users doesn't exist in SQLite. SQLite also has some advantages, right? For example, it's good for development and testing because it is easy to set up. So you just need a file and then the Python script which accesses that .db file. However, later on you may want to remove SQLite and implement MySQL, and this is something I'll show you today. How to change from SQLite to MySQL. And then the other advantage is that SQLite is easily portable. It's a file system database. So we have this .db file. With MySQL, you don't use a file, you install MySQL. With SQLite, we didn't install any software, but with MySQL, we'll install the MySQL software. And that software will contain the data. But it's not a file, it's a software that runs on the computer. And that makes MySQL not as easy to be portable to another computer compared to SQLite. So these are the advantages of SQLite. I hope you have a better idea of the differences between MySQL and SQLite. So now we're ready to install MySQL. And then once we install it, I'll show you how to use the MySQL system, the software, and then we'll see how we can access MySQL databases from Python. So let's see you in the next video. Hey, in this video I'll show you how to install MySQL on Windows. Mac and Linux users, please watch the other videos. So let's install MySQL on Windows. MySQL technically comes as the MySQL community server. So you want to search on Google for that, MySQL community server, and then the first result on dev.mysql.com/download/MySQL should be the page where you can download the MySQL community server software. In this drop-down list, you may want to select the Microsoft Windows operating system, and under recommended download, you'll see this big poster here. So you might want to click somewhere in here or go to download page. So that's the recommended download, and here you'll find the installers. So either choose the first one or the second one. Basically, the first one will download something else when you are installing the file. But basically, feel free to pick any of them. Then in the next page, you may be asked to log in or sign up for an account. That's not necessary, so you may want to just click on no thanks, just start my download. And that should start to download that file. Then press on that file, press on yes, yes again, and MySQL will be installing in your computer. Then this will show up. I do suggest you to select on server only, which means you want to install the MySQL community server. This developer default does have a lot of other tools which we don't need and which you can install later if you want. So server only is better to have. It occupies less space on your computer. So that is what we're installing, and press on execute to download. Once this is downloaded, the status here will go to downloaded, and then you go to next and then execute to install that. So this installer is downloading and installing MySQL server. Now it says complete, so I'll go to next, next. And you want to leave these settings as they are, so you want to select on development computer, don't change this, and press on next. Here you want to select the first option, it's more secure, and press on next. Now in this box you want to specify the password of the root user. You know, when I compared SQLite with MySQL, I mentioned that with MySQL you can have multiple database users. So when you are installing MySQL, MySQL is creating a default user and the username will be root. So like this, root. And here you want to specify the password for the root user. I do suggest you to use the same password as me, which is Python course. And repeat it, Python course. So that will make sure that you're not forgetting this password. Press on next. Press on next, don't change these settings. And then next again. And you want to execute. Then press on finish. Next and finish. And we're done with the installation. Now let's see if it works. So you want to go to the search button and search for Windows PowerShell. You can also use the command prompt, but I do suggest you to use the Windows PowerShell. So press on Windows PowerShell. And so MySQL, the server, can be accessed through a command line. That's how you can interact with your databases, through a command line, but you can also access those databases through Python, as you'll see in the next videos. But through the command line, the way you access MySQL is by running MySQL -u root -p. I'll explain what this does, but first execute it with enter. And you'll probably get this error. The term MySQL is not recognized. That's because MySQL has not been added to the system path. So to do that, you want to go to search again, search for environment variables. So edit the system environment variables. And you want to go to this button, environment variables. And then you want to go to the system environment variables section. You want to click on path. This environment variable, click on edit, and then here you want to add a new environment variable. So press on new, and this now will be the path pointing to the MySQL installation. To find the path in your system, you want to go to the file system, to the Windows Explorer, go to the C drive, program files, search for MySQL, so MySQL Server 8.0 or 9.0, wherever you're using. And then you want to click on bin, enter inside bin. And now this is the path we want to copy and paste in that environment variable window. So you can select on this address and select all the path, right click, copy. Alternatively, you can also right click over the bin folder and go to copy as path. So either way is fine, and then go to this window. So yeah, we want to add new and paste that path there. Press on OK, OK again, and OK in this window as well. Close the Windows PowerShell, open it again. So you need to restart it, and then do MySQL -u root -p, press enter. You'll be asked to enter the password this time. This is the password you created when you were installing MySQL. So I entered Python course in my case. That's the password for the user root. So this command starts MySQL now. If I press enter, MySQL will start. So if you see this, that means you are inside the MySQL server now. You can interact with the server. And so this -u was to specify the user. So that's a flag. It says the user is root and the password is whatever you enter here. So then in here now, in the command line, you can write SQL queries. For example, show databases. and then you want to enter a semicolon there to end the query. Press enter, and that will show you the databases that are available now in your MySQL server, and you can create more databases. But for a complete tutorials, you have to see the next lecture on how to use MySQL. So this was about how to install MySQL on Windows. You can close this window, and yeah, I'll see you in the next lectures. Thanks. Hey, in this video I'll show you how to install MySQL on Mac computers. Windows and Linux users, please watch the other videos. So what we need to install is MySQL community server. So you can search on Google for that. The first results point to dev.mysql.com/download/MySQL. You want to click there. And that should take you to this page. So make sure that Mac OS is selected here. And here you can filter out the results for either ARM processors, which are the new M series processors, or the older Intel processors for this second option. Or you can just leave it all and then find the appropriate processor in here. So for me, it would be the ARM processor, so I'll just download this file. In the next page, you may want to log in or sign up for an account, but that's not necessary, so you can just click on no thanks, just start my download. Now that should start downloading the DMG file. Once the downloading is completed, you want to go to the downloads folder and double click on that DMG file. Then double click on the PKG file here. I'll press on allow, continue, agree, and then press on install. You may be asked to enter the password of your Mac user account. Then you'll be shown these two options, so make sure to select the first one, use strong password encryption. Click on next. Then here you want to provide a new password for the user root. So this user root will be one of the database users. So as I mentioned in the previous video, MySQL supports multiple database users. So the user is root, and the password for the user root will be, I suggest you to use the same password as me because you might forget it. I'll just use the password Python course. No spaces, just small letters. Python course. You may leave this option as checked and press on finish. Perhaps you may be asked to enter the password of your Mac user account once more. So don't confuse the Mac user with the database user. They are different things. So then I'll press on close, move the installation file to bin if you like, and that will delete the file from the downloads folder. And to check if MySQL was installed correctly, you want to go to the Apple icon here, and then you want to go to System Settings. And then here in the search, you want to look for MySQL. So MySQL is installed as a service in the settings, so you can click on that and this will open up. So here you can start or stop MySQL server. So mine has already started. And this is where you can also uninstall MySQL using this button. So for now, I'll just close this window. This has been installed correctly. But then you want to open the terminal and you want to check if MySQL can be accessed from the terminal. Initially, it may say that, oh, this command was not found. That's because the MySQL command now has to be added to the path. To do that, you want to do touch.bash profile. Press enter, and then you want to open that bash profile file. So that will open it with text editor. And here you want to do export with small letters. path is equal to, let me zoom it, a $sign, 2 curly brackets, and inside the curly brackets you want to write path again, and then here a colon, so no spaces. There's a space here, but here you have a colon, and then here you want to specify the path to MySQL. To find that path, you want to search on Spotlight for /user usr. So that will show up this folder, usr. So open that. Then you want to go to local, the local folder. Then you want to go to MySQL minus the version, whatever you have there. In my case, it looks like this. So click that folder. And then you want to press the Option key and then right click over bin. And then you want to go to copy bin as path name. So we're copying the absolute path of this bin folder. And then you want to go back to that text editor here and you want to paste that path, right? So that's a path, /usr local MySQL -8, etc. /bin. Now, you want to copy that entire path first to have it in your clipboard. You want to close this window. If you are asked to save the file, press on yes to make sure that you save the file. And then you also want to do the same with touch.zshrc. This is another file where you want to insert that path. So that command makes sure to create that file if it does not exist, and then we open that file, .zshrc. I do have some existing content in here. So what I want to do now is I want to go to the next line. If you have an empty file, that's okay. You can just paste this in the first line. So in my case, I pasted it in the second line. So that's the line we wrote previously. So make sure to do Command S and then close this so that that file is saved. Then you want to quit the terminal. So make sure to quit it with that or Command Q. And then you want to open the terminal again. Now we should expect MySQL to be recognized. So let's do MySQL -u root -p. This command now should start the MySQL server with user root. So that's a flag which declares the user. The user is root for my case, but also for you. That's the default username. And -p means now if I press enter, we'll be asked to enter the password. If you got an error that MySQL was not recognized, probably you need to restart to quit the terminal and then open it again. And also double check the export line that we wrote, which we added in those two files. And then quit the terminal again, come here and run this command again. So now for the password, you need to enter Python course. That's the password I chose for my user root when I was installing MySQL. So you'll not see anything here when you type, but you can press enter. And if you enter the password of user root correctly, you should see this. So that's a MySQL command line. In this command line, you can write SQL commands, for example, show databases, and you need also this semicolon at the end. Press on enter. Oh, sorry, I should have written databases. So that will show you all the databases that we currently have. So that's an example of an SQL command. But in the next lecture, I'll show you an overview of how to use this command line. So for now, this lecture was just to show how to install MySQL and how to make sure it works. So if you got this, then MySQL is working. It's ready to be used either from the terminal or from a Python script. So that's about this video. Thanks. See you later. Hi, in this video, I'll show you how to install MySQL on Linux. Windows and Mac users, please watch the other videos on how to install MySQL. On Linux, I'm on an Ubuntu here. So there are different versions of Linux, and this instruction should work on most versions. So if they don't work on your version, then you should search on Google how to install MySQL community server for your particular Linux version. MySQL is very popular, so you should find a lot of tutorials. Otherwise, please follow this video. So we want to open the terminal. We want to do the installation through the terminal. Let me zoom in. First of all, we want to do an update of the apt package manager. So with sudo apt update, enter the password of your Linux user account and press enter. Once the update finishes, then you want to do sudo apt install MySQL -server. So what we are installing is the MySQL community server. This is a software, and I'll show you how to start this software and how to use it as well. So for now, press enter. This is asking you if you want to confirm the installation. Press Y and then press enter. And that's about the installation of MySQL server. You can close this terminal. Open the terminal again, a new instance. And let's try to run MySQL with sudo MySQL. Press enter. You want to enter the password of your Linux account. And press enter. And you should see this. So that means MySQL is working, but you need to do something else. You need to run an SQL command. So here you can run SQL commands, and on Linux you need to specify the password of your root user. So you do alter user root. This is the default user at single quote, and inside local host identified with MySQL underscore native password by single quote, and here you want to enter the new password for this particular user, for the root user. I'll suggest you do something like Python course, and then at the end of this SQL query you want to enter the semicolon and press enter. Query OK, so we just created a password for the user root. Now you can exit this MySQL command line, you go back to the terminal, and next time when you enter MySQL, you do MySQL -u root -p for password, press enter, enter the password which was Python course, press enter, and then you'll enter MySQL as the user root using that password. And that completes the installation of MySQL. So in the next video, I'll show you how to use this command line to interact with the database. Thanks for following. See you in the next video. Hey, welcome to the Getting Started guide on MySQL. So in this video, I'll show you how to interact with MySQL from your command line. For this, I'll be using the command line of PyCharm, the terminal, but you can use the terminal, the Windows PowerShell of your operating system. Is the same thing. Feel free to use whatever you feel comfortable with. So I've created a PyCharm project here just to have it ready for the next video where we'll start to write some Python code. But again, you don't have to do that right now. You can use the terminal of your operating system. So as I showed you already, the command to access the MySQL server is MySQL -u root -p. Press enter, and then you enter the password of the root user. That was Python course, in my case with lowercase letters, no spaces. Press enter and you should see this line here. That means you have entered the command line of the MySQL server. You can interact now with MySQL. And so it's important to understand that you are acting as the user root now. So what can we do with MySQL anyway? So MySQL is a database system, so it offers you to create databases, to create tables inside those databases, so you can have zero or multiple tables in a database, and each table has their own columns, and you can add data to that table. So the MySQL server is what will contain all these databases. And so to see the current databases, you want to do show databases. And every command has to end with a semicolon. So both these two are SQL keywords, and this is an SQL query, right? Now, you can also have lowercase letters for show and databases. Either way is fine, but I'll be using capital letters for SQL commands and lowercase letters for things like table names that we'll create ourselves, so that it's easier for you, the student, to understand if something is an SQL command or a constant, such as a table name or a column name or database name. So these two are commands, and what we'll see is this. So everything here is text-based, so these are just dashes just to create this view. So these are the databases. These are some default databases which MySQL keeps for its own configurations. But now you can create your own databases. To do that, you want to use the create command. Let me put the terminal up here. It's better for you to view. So create database. And then you want to specify a name for the new database you want to create. Let's call this school database, right, with lowercase letters. And don't forget the semicolon and press enter. You'll see this query OK. That means you have already created the database. Now you'd ask, well, shouldn't we be running these queries from within Python? Yes, that's also possible, but normally when you just create a database, that's like a one-time process. You create the database once and then your app will use that database. So this is more like a manual process that you want to do it on the command line here. Then Python will query data from that database, will insert new data and so on. So the app usually is concerned about reading and writing data to tables. But databases, you create them yourself here in the MySQL command line. Now, to verify that you actually created a database, you can call again show databases with semicolon, and you'll see that school has been added in the list of databases. To see the tables of the school database, you want to do show tables from school semicolon, press enter, and you'll get empty set for now, because we didn't create any table yet. So let's create a table for the school database. The command is create table, give a name for the table such as students. Then you want to open parentheses, press enter to go to the next line. So as long as we don't execute after a semicolon, that means the query continues and you can write the query in multiple lines. But this semicolon, that denotes that you are done with the query and you want to execute it. So don't write a semicolon just yet. And let's specify the column names. So we want an ID column. Let's try to create the student table that we'll be using in the next videos with Python. So students, the ID column is the first one. I'm using lowercase letters for the name of the column. That is a standard practice. So ID, and you want to specify the type of that column. This will be an int. Now normally we are ready to create the next column, but the ID column is a bit special. So we want to say ID int auto underscore increment auto increment space primary key. and then you press comma. So that's one column. And so we're specifying some parameters for the ID column. We're saying that this will be auto-generated by MySQL. So whenever a new student is added, a new ID will be auto-assigned to that student. So if you added John, now John will have 1, and then you add Jack after that. Jack will have the ID of 2 automatically, and so on. And this is also used, the ID column will be used as the primary key. A primary key serves like the column that identifies a particular row and can be used in certain occasions. Let's write the name column as well. This will be text, which is specified by this varchar, so variable characters basically. So you can have like letters and numbers, and this will be treated as text, not as a number. And normally you want to specify a length, the maximum length 255. That should be enough. Comma. Then we want to have a course of the same type, 255. Comma, and lastly mobile. This can be that, or it could be an integer, but let's keep it a variable length character, that as well. So that is the last column. You don't need a comma here. Press enter, close that parenthesis, right? We open that there, we close it here, and then the semicolon, and then we press enter. Now this error is interesting because it says no database selected, which is true because we created a database earlier, create database, we show the databases, but we haven't entered an actual database. So MySQL doesn't know where to create that table, for which database. So what we want to do is we want to run use school first. School is the name of the database with a semicolon, press enter, database change. Now we are inside the database, and with the upper arrow key you can execute previously executed statements. So you can call these statements now by pressing enter. So it's the same query. It's in one line, but it doesn't matter. So press enter. And this time we get query OK. A new table has been created, so we can do show tables. This time we didn't have to specify show tables from school because we are inside the school database. So now we get this students table. That's part of the school database. So we have a database, we have a table, but how can we see the rows inside this table? To do that, you'd use the select command. So select all from, you want to select all the columns from students. Semicolon, press enter, and you get empty set because we don't have any rows. So let's insert the first row into the table. Insert into, you want to specify the name of the table, students. So insert into students, into ID, name, course, and mobile. So these have to reflect exactly the names of the columns that you specified when you created the table. ID, name, course, mobile. You can press enter, continue to the next line, values. Now you specify the values for that particular row. So these values now have to reflect the order of these columns here. So the ID, well, actually, for the ID, you want to go back and remove the ID because that's an auto increment column. So you can just write a semicolon to basically abandon that command and then press the upper arrow key to call it again, remove ID, right? Go to the next line, write values in parentheses and then the semicolon, and inside here you want to enter name, for example Emma Pike, and the course will be math, mobile will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Press enter. you get this query OK, one row affected. So it seems like we added a row to the table. So let's call this command select all from students, and you should see all the rows in your table and the columns as well. So ID, name, course, mobile, and that's the row. Now I can continue with how to update and how to delete records, but these commands are actually mentioned in the next video where we use Python and we use the Student Management System app. So in that app we do have those update and delete commands. So basically those commands there will be the same as what you enter here, except of the semicolon basically. So we'll mention the update and the delete commands in the next video. So yeah, that's about how to interact with MySQL from the command line. To exit, you write exit, semicolon, press enter, and you're back to the terminal. Yeah, that's it. That's how you interact with MySQL. Thanks a lot. I'll see you in the next video. Hey, welcome back. In this video, we'll do some Python coding. So I'd like you to please create a new PyCharm project, and then inside that project place the main.py file which we developed yesterday. If you don't have that file somehow, please download it from the lecture resources so that we have the same file. But basically this is the file after we refactored the code in the last video of yesterday. So the code is still using SQLite 3, but now we want to implement MySQL in this code. So our code will be connected to a MySQL database instead of an SQLite database. So let's do that. First, I would like to install these. So hover your mouse here and install package. Then we want to open the terminal. Let me dock it. And we want to install the library which allows Python to connect to a MySQL database. So my virtual environment is activated, so I can just do pip install MySQL minus connector minus Python and execute. And then we want to import MySQL dot connector. Once this is installed, we should see this without the red underline. Right, the installation went fine in my case, so MySQL connector is now connected. And now here is where we really see the benefit of refactoring. So yesterday in the last video we did some refactoring. This line was spread across different classes. So now we'll have to change how we connect to the database. And we only have to do that just here, right? In this class. We don't have to do it in every other class. So what we need to change now is that, first of all, we don't have a database file this time because MySQL is not a file-based database. So the parameters we have will be a host, a username or just user, password, and database. This will be the database name, right? So we can give some default names to this here. So you should write localhost for the host. That's the name of the host for the MySQL server we installed. The user is root. The password, in my case, it was Python course. So this password is the password of the root user. Because what's happening now here is that the app will behave like a database user that connects to the database. So previously we connected to the database through the terminal, but now we connect to it through Python. And so this app now is known as the client of that database server. So the server is the MySQL entity, the software. That is the server, and that server will serve data to the client. So the client is this app. Right, the database name was school. So all these are as strings, right? All these are strings. Then we do self.host is equal to host, self.user is equal to user, self.passwords is equal to password, self.database is equal to database. So we created these 4 attributes, and each of these is equal to its corresponding parameter, and the parameters will have their default values, so each of these will be equal to those default values. And then we do connection is equal to not SQLite but MySQL dot connector. So this module here dot connect with a host parameter self.host, user is self.user, password is self.password. So these are parameters of this particular method, right? This is different from that. That's a parameter of the init method. This is a parameter of the connect method. Let's split this line here. And lastly, database is equal to self.database. And so we connect, and then we return the connection object, and then these other methods will use that connection object. So for example here, database connection.connect, so we don't have to change anything here now. That's because we refactored the code yesterday, so now the code is more manageable. That's the power of refactoring. But let's take a look if the queries are okay, because there are some slight things that change now. The SQL queries for SQLite 3 and MySQL are mostly the same. So that's, for example, fine, and you don't have to write this semicolon in queries which you write from within Python code. So that's fine. And let's scroll down, find the other queries, update student set name, question mark. Now, in MySQL, we use %s, so this placeholder instead of question marks. So please change them to these. That's all we have to change. Then these other ones will stay as they are. So you provide a tuple replacing each of these placeholders. Let's scroll down, delete from students, where ID is a question mark. Let's change that to %s. And then there comes the tuple with one item. Inserting data, insert into students, name, course, mobile, values, %s, 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 and there goes the tuple. And the last query, select query to search for students. So let's just change that again, %s, name, comma, so that's a tuple, and that's it. That's all we have to change in the code, and now we have implemented MySQL. So let's give it a try. And we got an error in line 85. Let's go to line 85. It says that the connection object does not have an attribute execute. That is because when it comes to MySQL, you should always create a cursor object. So even when you are just reading data, like selecting, so cursor will be equal to connection.cursor. And then here you say cursor.execute. Right. So let's find the other occurrences of connection.execute, if there are any. So we have this select operation here. I think we have one more. Yeah, this one. But here we are using a cursor in this other query, in the search query. So only line 85 had the issue. So this was about loading data. So let's run again the code after fixing it. Another error, let's try to troubleshoot it in line 88. This time it looks like we get a none type from the results. So the results are not fetching anything. So to get the actual data, you should get the results by using cursor.fetch all. And you don't need to give a variable to this, so this executes the query. The query is stored in the cursor, and then you extract the data from the cursor. Let's see now. The table shows up. So let's try to add. The icons are not here because I haven't pasted the icon folder in here. We can do that later. So let's press the add student button, which is located here in the toolbar somewhere. Let's add Andy Smith 1 2 3 4 0, register, and Andy Smith is added here. Let's try the search button, which is somewhere in here. Andy Smith, maybe we have a problem with this too. Yeah, here we go. So in line 293, so we have to follow the same logic here, cursor.execute, and then result is equal to cursor.fetch all. So let's try to search again. Go here, Andy Smith, search, and then that selects Andy Smith, both occurrences of Andy Smith there. Lastly, let's try to update Andy Smith. So I'll select and edit. Let's add an S, and it updates. Fine. So all these changes that we did are now applied to the MySQL database. Now, if you deploy this to a remote server, for example, Python Anywhere or Heroku or DigitalOcean, then you'd have to set up a new database in that server. So they have their own databases. They can offer you how to install it, and it's easy usually how to set up a database there. And then you would migrate the data from your database to that database. And there are easy methods to do that. There are tools to get the data from here. You can get them as a CSV from your MySQL server and upload that CSV to the remote SQL server. And then you upload your app there, and your app should be able to connect to that database, but you need to change these parameters to reflect the database parameters of that remote server. So we're talking about web apps basically, because you don't deploy GUIs, desktop GUIs, because MySQL is also used for web apps. And yeah, that's about MySQL. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you in the next videos. See you.